All right. Hey, everybody. Today, we're going to be doing something a little different, but we still have a very, very special guest with us today on Showverse. We have actor, writer, producer, most likely caterer, and realistically, probably at some point, like editor, a jack of all trades. We have none other than Bryan James with us. Bryan?
Hi, thank you. What an introduction. Appreciate
No.
being here.
Thanks for being with us. I know I jest a little bit, but I looked into your background. You are very much an actor first and foremost, but you also have two movies coming up, which we will get into, where you have written and directed them, as well as partially produced as well. Which, when you're able to juggle all of these roles in a successful manner, it tends to become like what is there yet you can't do. So, but the reason we have Bryan on today is because he actually has two films coming up for release. We have Gigolo and we have Reckless, which we will get into the nitty-gritty of those momentarily. But something that I actually do want to know about you personally is that you have actually gone more towards the psychological thriller element when it comes to your acting career. Is that true?
It looks that way so far, right? I mean, I guess I veered away from some of the traditional sort of archetypes and such, and I like the drama.
Oh, well, obviously, with psychological thrillers, you are able to get a more detailed story as well as more complexity, not just as an actor, but as a writer and a director as well. And usually when it comes towards that pivot, there's usually a lot of personal reasons or even personal gain that comes from trying to tackle those roads. So I do want to know, before we get into Reckless and Gigolo, what caused you to actually pursue that element? And if so, did it have anything to do with your, you know, personal sensibilities as an actor?
Hmm. You know what I think is interesting and I always find fascinating is in stories how there's perspectives that are universally known, but it's like who's the villain and who's the hero in real life stories because honestly it feels like everyone as they should is walking through their life wanting to be the hero of their story. And so with that in mind, I just kind of feel like it's more interesting to dive into those same archetypes but have it be more layered with what's really going on. And so in all of these works that I've been a part of, I do feel like there's a familiarity and there's kind of a gray area to the human condition and that people aren't perfect. And I just think as an actor, that's more interesting to explore. So that's probably where it comes from. And then if you think about in other arts, and especially in the last 10, 15 years, even if it's a niche division of Hollywood, like there's always movies that are maybe not seen by everyone in America, but they become popular, and it feels like it's become more interesting to like look into things that's dysfunctional, but I don't know, just kind of give it a light. And that's where I feel like these projects can kind of live in the same lane as where those sensibilities have moved with the industry.
Of course, obviously. I mean, in the last couple decades, we have seen more morally gray roles become prevalent in the acting sphere. And you actually did bring up a little bit of like your own personal sensibilities and training. Um, if I may ask, where did you get your start as an actor? Did you study Shakespeare? Did you study, theater first, or were you like a movie actor first, then a theater actor? Explain.
Um, I did a lot of theater when I was in high school, and I actually performed Shakespeare. Went to a festival doing different kinds of works, and when I kind of moved to LA, I started studying with Ivana Chubbuck at the Ivana Chubbuck Studio, and was a real fan of substitution and as a technique, and just started working. Luckily, like I got my SAG card on a thing called Mystery ER, ERR on Discovery Health Channel, and it was kind of a reenactment gig, but nonetheless, and just also having a lot of luck and moving in the web sphere, the new media kind of stuff is primarily where I've had a lot of my focus in my career, which I didn't expect. You know, like I was pinned for Grey's Anatomy, and then they go in a different direction, and you can just have those kinds of experiences, and you just kind of want to be working as an actor, and you know that you have something to bring, and that's kind of where putting the other hats on to get the stories told that I wanted to be a part of, like, became a path that I took. Because it's like that saying, they're not handing it to you. You kind of have to make it happen yourself. I guess I'm a testimony to that being true.
Well, no, and with Reckless and Gigolo, a lot of it is, I've looked into those movies a little bit, and it is very obvious that these are very ground level indies. And I've spoken with many a filmmaker who have talked about the troubles of just getting a simple small project off the ground, let alone getting the whole thing made. But with Reckless, if I can just dive into that just only a little bit. You mentioned Grey's Anatomy, and you've talked about some of your other roles, and a lot of these things do kind of form around soaps in a sense, where it's a lot of just very down to earth drama. And I'm
Mm.
wondering, did any of that experience kind of help shape how you made Reckless, whether that be as an actor, as a writer, or as a director?
What's interesting is that I do have like a background in the soap genre, so to speak, and I have, you know, a lot of affinity for how fast they work and how much material they get done, like Herculean efforts very quickly. And I think that it's actually a positive in that regard for sure. And I take that work ethic into everything. I think that you can accomplish more faster than you think. It doesn't mean we're sacrificing quality. But if you come from that genre and anyone that is done soap would know that, and you're doing like 80 pages of dialogue a day, and you're watching the idea that the sets are back to back and that you can film and you can fool the audience in that way, uh, just on a logistical level too, like not just as an actor, but you kind of just see that like anything is possible, which I think is a good way to approach indie filmmaking, because inevitably on any project there's going to be mountains to climb, boulders to push over hills. It's metaphorically speaking, it's going to not be easy. So I guess I do think that that's the good thing about on a production level soap operas. They kind of teach you a good work ethic, I feel like.
Well, I mean, no, and for anyone that's even worked in entertainment, both live and filmed, there's a lot of patience that goes into that industry because there's always going to be flubs, whether that be an actor getting a line wrong or one of the camera guys accidentally pulling the focus wrong. Patience is a virtue that is a deep necessity for this industry, and as an actor too, patience comes from crafting any certain roles. And looking into your background, and even hearing your words, you love these deeply, deeply complex characters, And what was it? The actor from Running Man, Coleman, what Coleman?
Woman Domingo.
Right. Recently, he has gone on record saying that he would love to be able to play a Marvel villain because, and I'm quoting him here, uh, it would be so fascinating to get the audience to shed a tear for the bad guy. And I am wondering, do you sort of share that sentiment to an extent, having someone maybe hate the good guy for a little bit or feel sympathy for the villain?
For me, I kind of look at it as an overall arc. What's the takeaway more than the individual moment of the character? So, like, not to be the morality police, but I would rather have the audience, if I had my druthers, take away from an experience where you're kind of highlighting the villain, the circumstance that everyone's human, that choices were made that made that person that way, that there's consequences for those actions. That's what I love about narrative storytelling. And so it's like, isolating it in a moment during the piece or rooting for a character. It's definitely things the audience will do. And I just hope that the through line can still be in the TikTok fast-paced moving world that we have to see the cause and effect of things, because that's what I think is really important and interesting and like impactful in visual storytelling is that you can literally, in the course of 2 hours, if you have the attention span and the desire, kind of see a through line of an arc of a choice made. And I think that's what's interesting to try to like showcase that. I think that can be enhancing to the audience. You can have experiences, so to speak, without even having them. In a way, film can really be something that I think could be a vehicle that can actually shape people's lives in positive ways. I know that's an obvious statement, but it's like that responsibility kind of should matter to answer your question. So it's like we don't want to glorify the anti-hero too much. We want them to be understood. And we want to see maybe a familiarity in the human experience with all characters. But that's kind of what I hope like is where art continues to move. Because I think we're at an interesting time where it can really continue to emphasize anything and everything. And I think that there's a cause and effect to that too. People probably pay more attention to what's on TV, what's in the movies than reading or following the news sometimes even.
I could not agree with you more. I can tell you more people that have watched the Andor show than have actually picked up CNN, which a little concerning, but that's not the topic of this discussion
But
here.
thank God the Andor show is at least good. Like it has
Oh,
depth and meaning, right? That's
exactly. And I actually like that, but and not to be actually, you know what? Allow me to be at least somewhat of a contrarian, if only for a moment,
Yeah.
because I've looked into your roles and you definitely love the moral complexity, the gray character, the one where, it's a very human sort of tale. And we see a lot of these characters now more than ever in so many shows. I mean, Andor, for example, is a great example of this. And I think Game of Thrones really did popularize this idea that no one bad person is wholeheartedly evil, just as no
Mm.
one hero is wholeheartedly good. But from a creator's perspective, I do want to know, do you think, at least in today's age where now there's too much information to be, digested all at once, do you think that standard stories of just good versus evil, where you have your shining white knight going up against an evil dark lord, do you think those stories still have a place in the entertainment medium, or do you think that just as morally complex characters have now become a matter of evolvement from those old classic tales, do you think that it's just a matter of we need to keep pushing forward and focusing on moral complexity, as that is maybe more interesting and more prevalent in today's society? I'd love to hear your take on this.
No, that was well phrased. And it's like the second part of it, the moral complexity needs to be there moving forward no matter what. But the first part of what you were saying, like these other types of archetypes, traditional storytelling, I think they do have a place. I think they more than have a place. I think that what happens is in the culture, the framing has changed. So the intention and the approach to telling these traditional archetypes again with the moral complexity added in without it feeling patronizing or condescending or like woke, all of those things that people find a negative, like wanting to just find truth and genuine connection. It's a hard task, but that's where I don't think, to answer your question, that anything isn't still approachable and that there isn't something that might be refreshing actually to circle back to with the lens of always knowing that like the toothpaste is out of the jar and that there's like moral complexity that needs to always be there. So it would be interesting because maybe sometimes you can mix that together with some things and it could end up better than you think. And maybe some things are stifled by the idea that adding moral complexity to them eliminates them. But it's probably a case by case basis. And I hope actually that we don't move away completely from traditional archetypes in storytelling because I think fundamentally those have a point and a purpose too. And it's like I was thinking about it with working on Reckless and Gigolo. It's kind of like the fullness of who a person is on both the characters I play. so many different aspects to people. So having different types of films is kind of important, more than a little important, because it will emphasize the fact that there's such a complexity to people. So that's my point. I don't want us to get too just that everything's dark and deep. And I know I'm an advocate for that, but it's like having the levity of the experiences that are rooted in joy and maybe things that people would roll their eyes at. But it's like find a new way in to approach those stories too, because those are also rooted in truth and need to be told.
I love that answer because I have heard, what was it? There's filmmakers like Christopher Nolan who likes these grounded and very real stories who, go on record saying he's like, I love the fantastical when it comes to like when other people do it. It's just that's not the movies I want to make, but those are the movies that I can enjoy. And so to
Mm.
hear someone uh, who's worked on films like Reckless, which we're about to get into, say it's like, look, I do believe that there is a place for those stories. In fact, I hope we continue to get those stories. It's just in terms of what I enjoy making, that's just not necessarily the avenue I want to go down. I think
Yeah.
that's a very, very even take that I hope more people can actually stand by. Because I
Thank
do
you.
agree, there is a place for traditional archetypes, just as there's a place for the more complex archetypes. And with that, I actually want to lead over into your work first on Reckless because yeah, we speak about these moral complexities and even how you tried implementing more traditional archetypes within your role as I'm sorry, the main character's name was
Alex, yeah, Forrest.
Alex Forrest, who was dealing with this overwhelming obsession. Um, but I want to know when it came to crafting that role, what did you kind of hope audiences would take away from it, whether that be through, a more nuanced take on obsession or a sort of stance on modern relationships?
I actually hoped, even if it might be too lofty of a goal, I'm serious, that this piece, that this art, if and when someone watched it, would move them to moving away from the cliche. And what I mean to say by that is Obsession can feel very Lifetime movie and very TV of the week. I don't know. I don't know if I achieved it. I don't know if it's even possible to take that kind of thing and then try to make it something different. But that was the goal because then I thought there'd be a deeper understanding to that kind of behavior. So when I was crafting Alex, I mean, I was totally rationalizing, not justifying, but getting to understand it, never judging it, not wanting to look at it like it was a Jerry Springer episode either. Because there's a fun to be had by that, I'm sure, but that's definitely not what I wanted to do. And so I felt like hopefully the movie, because of what it is about, would surprise people because of what the intention is from it, which is actually probably contradiction to what the perspective might be from audiences, because these are very standard, cliche, obsession based stalker stories, and we see them all the time, you know?
No, and we've there's countless stories, both real life and fictional, um, and it's unfortunate because I did try looking up, these archetypes for stories for Reckless, and you get stuff like the Glenn Close movie with Michael Dodd,
Yeah,
Dangerous
Fatal Attraction. Yeah.
Fatal Attraction. You have great stories like that. But then, unfortunately, there's the other end of that, which was that Fred Durst, John Travolta movie that came out.
Oh yeah. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
and
I
so,
forgot the title of that, but yes.
no, I watched that with my friends once, and we were just like, "How did this get made?" But in terms of how, you know, I understand trying not to take away from a cliche, and the truth is that obsession is very much a negative emotion. So the idea of trying to take it and put it through a lens of just, look, this is how this works. You don't need to agree with it, but you can at least understand it. I think is one of the reasons why film as a medium is such a truly powerful framework because you can
Yeah.
take these concepts that are, for the most part, taboo or negative, and you can
Mhm.
at least portray it so that way it's not a matter of trying to gain sympathy. It's to gain an understanding. And I
Hmm.
think, uh, you know, there is a fine line that needs to be distinguished between those two words, which is sympathy and understanding.
Hmm.
Um, and overall, when it came to just making it, because, you know, you are the writer, you are the director, what sparked this idea? What drew you to it?
Well, what's interesting and what's in my head right now, and this is the answer to this question, is that it's like to carry on what we were just talking about. I do think that these kinds of acts of behavior will create a response in another person where they're going to shut down. They're going to feel emotionally afraid. They're going to not understand. They're going to close themselves off. Film, like you just said, is a medium if they desire to look at the full picture of the circumstance, which is my job as the storyteller. But it's like literally that's what I wanted to do. And that was what the approach was, to understand this universal experience, which is people liking one another and then having conflict and then hurt feelings, to put it mildly, but genuinely, that's like where it starts from. And to then try to explore that in an overall way that isn't judging someone like I think people do in life. I think everybody will play it off of their perspective. Let's be omnipresent in the art. That's what I guess is important and distinct to want to say. The omnipresent storyteller is more important than ever in some of these narratives where people are emotionally affected by the experiences they're having. They may not have the cognitive dissonance to actually know the fullness of the experience. And if they don't know, they don't learn. If they don't learn, they don't grow. And then we see in society when people stay stuck in their emotions, how toxic everything can feel. It can start to feel unsafe in general. It's just, it's like, so everyone's in it together.
Exactly, because at that point you're starting whole if you don't allow yourself to at least explore other ideas and other emotions or even just or like things that make you go, I don't agree with this. I don't like if you shut yourself off from
Hmm.
that discussion of things that you don't agree with, then that's how we get, well,
Right?
yeah. Without saying it, but yeah.
But I
And
guess it's like everything feels like it's in cement then. And as an artist, I like for things to feel like there's movement, right? That's kind of, I think, imperative. I think film that's really exciting, it kind of leaves a resonance with you. And what so I'm being cliche, but it's like film is so beautiful because there's some imprint, there's something tangible, like beyond our eyes, that's happening when it's really transmitting something. And I was happy because when I watched Reckless, I felt like it was communicating what we're talking about. It was giving a perspective to this circumstance that this character was dealing with obsession. And so anyone that has felt that way or has been on the other side of someone that felt that way about them, I feel like will get something out of this experience if they're wanting to have it. And that's what makes me feel excited to make these things, whether they touch like a few people or lots of people. It's like the act of making them and putting them out there and having a conversation with the collective, honestly, like the universe.
And I appreciate that so much as someone who is at least trying to get in that field as well, and trust me, as a writer and director, it is so difficult to try and explore discussions of taboo topics or just difficult topics enough as it is. But what's interesting, and I want to move away from Reckless just a bit, it's that you wanted to have these difficult discussions about taboos and subject matters that otherwise, aren't necessarily dinner table friendly. And what's interesting is that I want to talk to you about your upcoming film, Gigolo, releasing on February 14th, 2026. Make sure to catch it on Valentine's Day. Yes, I'm shilling for it.
Yes.
Give me a break.
Thank you. Appreciate
But
you.
oh, of course, of course. Um, but this is actually something that like as a concept for a film. I think we should at least be talking about more and more and more because thankfully with films like Anora, which came out recently, it's sparked discussions on sex work, which, for better or for worse, is now at least in the public eye, and we can at least have these, difficult discussions. And as much as it is considered a female-dominated, um, world, there is still there's still the male element as well that is on the other end of the whole thing. I mean, and look, whether or not you want to consider escorts, part of the sex work, that is still something that falls under that unfortunate umbrella. So the whole idea of engaging in difficult discussions and being a little uncomfortable in bringing up these topics, did you bring that same mindset when you were making Gigolo?
Yeah, I did. And when you're talking about this, it's making me realize, which I always knew, but in reflection, that these are the things that have affected me. These are the things that mom and dad didn't give me an answer for. And so I stewed over them. I feel like I've come to my own conclusions. That's why I bring them to you now. Even if it might feel bold or daring to some people, I honestly live in a space where I'm all like, there's nothing more important than authenticity. So I literally at times have felt uncomfortable with Gigolo. But then I've just moved through it. It's made me feel like a healthier person. So the approach to it is definitely rooted in wanting to understand the things that for my personality are the only things that are interesting, the things that I didn't have a full grasp over, but that were affecting me anyway. Because I get why we don't talk about these things at dinner with our family, but they are part of our existence. With reckless having relationships and how you process emotions. With Gigolo, same exact thing, actually. You know?
Yeah, and even then, when it comes to these discussions, you keep a level of secrecy
Mhm.
in you. And I do want to know, did you how did you bring that to the overall writing process, or even just the I have to stop labeling these things, but the creation of this? How did you bring the level of secrecy to that process?
That's an interesting way to put it, and I think it's accurate. And so it's all like people don't owe anyone anything, but if you have an experience where someone's secrecy is being pronounced at you or you want something from that, then you can feel emotionally moved by it. I tried to live in the emotionally movement of that whatever I've really gone through. I sat in a room by myself and I wrote unapologetically without thinking that I would ever make it or that anyone would ever watch it. And so that's kind of how I approach everything. And I think that maybe that's something good to emphasize to people. You can't stand in your own way, and you will if you put any expectation on anything. So seriously, like just if you can, like I love how you framed it as secret. So like go inward and then release. Um, that's what everything is that I make for sure.
And, even when it comes with secrecy and holding stuff in, that does take both an emotional and physical toll on somebody. And it seems from what I've heard and from what I've seen, you brought that level of intensity to the role. I mean, what does that do to someone both here and physically?
What's interesting about what you're saying, and I appreciate you, is that I just go all in on things. And so the resonance of it is what I can talk about, which is that like your body doesn't know you're acting. So there's experiences that you're like processing. If you like, there were moments which I'm proud of the work because it's like, whoa, it feels so real. And so that's what I think is interesting is that we all have the desire to want to have experiences, and I'm a very shy actually like kind of inward person that's actually omnipresent more than not in my life, which makes me able to then put it in the art. And so then to have experiences that aren't real as an actor is funny because like I said my body thought they were, and so that's what's cool. I think it's cool because I can kind of maybe get safely in and out of some things that are like gonna like be a bigger thing between action and cut. And so that's always been the thrill of acting. But that's the thing that's funny. As the older I get, the more I realize, like, well, I'm a person first and foremost. And it's like, as an actor, we really do put ourselves through it, don't we? Like, acting, I think having time off in between roles is important. Like, I'm going to go into production on something else soon, but like, I haven't made anything since Gigolo. And it's been good to like kind of take a breath on it, you know?
No, obviously. And, it's there's always been these discussions about, method acting or what's put into the role. And, from the outside looking in, and take it from me. Sometimes, I'm like, I'm glad they put all that effort into the role, but other times I'm like, why was this necessary? What, like you did like Jared Leto putting on like 10 pounds and then putting on more of a fat suit to be in House of Gucci. He's just like, I was so into the role. I'm just like, I don't, you have like 15 minutes of screen time. You really, you don't need to put that much role. But then, you talk to an actor, you talk to someone who actually lives in that industry and lives in that role, and it's like, you want the best performance. You want to be able to convey everything necessary for that specific role. So it's not a
Mhm.
matter of, oh, I'm only on screen for 5 minutes, so I'm not gonna. So it's like, like I'm just gonna half-ass it a little bit. I mean, if you're a big name who knows when their next meal is coming, then yeah,
Yeah,
you're allowed to be a little bit, you know, laissez-faire with how the role is perceived. But for someone like you who's actively putting everything into it, it's nice to see and understand that it's a matter of I'm committing myself to this, and
yeah,
I have to put my soul into this because this is something I truly believe in. So it's a
yeah.
better understanding of, oh, sorry, go.
No, I appreciate what you're saying. I want to tell you now, it's like what's funny, even if people make jokes about it, but Gigolo is a very physical role, and I literally felt like I was attacked on a football field as the quarterback. I was sore everywhere, and and then with Reckless. I did like live in character as the character and act as the character to other people, knowing that that would create an energetic reverberance towards me that was probably going to be like negative. It's kind of like going to make me feel uncomfortable. I kind of like intentionally put an energy on myself of other people not liking me by being too aggressive and too kind of not appropriate intentionally. And that's like odd to do, I understand, but like I had to be able to understand the fullness of what that character felt. Because for me, it made sense, like as a detective, logically, to see the extreme behavior that my character was exhibiting in Reckless. That would only come from feeling like you'd lost everything. So you need to have experiences where people kind of cut the cord on you. And it's like, I don't know, like that's what I think it's fun to be able to have a space to share that with you because it's interesting, like that's what I think it takes to really be doing work worthwhile. I'm not trying to just do work that isn't going to like have some kind of an impact, hopefully.
Well, I mean, even then, even as an artist, you'd like for your work to have some level of impact. I mean,
Yeah.
that's still a desired effect. But the more that we're talking about your roles on Reckless and Gigolo, it's we talked about nuance. We talked about moral complexity, but there's certain themes that I'm kind of seeing between these two movies. One of them is I think identity under pressure. I think that's the best way I can
Mhm.
describe it. So in and on top of that, both of these sound like just emotionally exhausting roles to do. And from what I've heard and seen, like Reckless released back in November, like
Yeah.
just a month ago, and now on top of that, you have Gigolo coming out in less than 2 months. So there's I know you have a lot of time, but there's so much. Sorry, I know you don't have a lot of time, but there's a lot that I want to really,
No,
really
keep
dive
going.
into this.
We're good.
Oh, then okay, then I'm going to keep the ball rolling here because there's a lot more I want to kind of dissect with you as a
Okay.
creator. And that is, so you are dealing with themes on both of them of identity under pressure, desire and wants versus reality. And on top of that, the cost of living through these things, but at the cost of your own soul. These are very, very emotionally and, as you also put it, physically exhausting things that you have to put yourself through as an actor and as a filmmaker overall. I just got to know what made you go down this route, and not just like I get as a creator, but back to back. Because I'm guessing as soon as you were done with Reckless, you went straight into Gigolo, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know why, but I had an instinct that I couldn't rest on Reckless. I'm serious. Like, I think that we live in an industry that like puts you in a box, and I'm proud of my work in Reckless, but I don't want to be identified as that character as like, okay, let me give you a 1-2 punch, do what you want with it. But like Gigolo and the character of Jeremy is completely different than Alex and Reckless, and I kind of needed that. I did. I knew what I was getting myself into with Reckless, and I wanted to do another thing that would also be the same kind of challenge, but again, character wise, completely different. And that's why I'm excited for people to be able to see them back to back because I do think that's important. If you're wanting to put me as an artist in a box like we put everyone in a box, then I'm gonna give you a 1-2 punch and then let that be where I'm in the box. And then you try to move from there. You know what I mean? And so I think I've heard that from other actors that I respect that have had careers with longevity, but you just constantly push against like what you just did. As odd as that may sound, it's like you're very happy with what you did. And then can I get as far away as possible from it? I honestly want to do like a very wholesome, kind of family friendly, like guy role next after what I just did with Gigolo. And I think it's just because the resonance is interesting to me because people start to place onto you that you are what you're doing. And that's interesting to me because I get it. But as an actor, I would like to do enough things that you just start to realize I'm not any of these things respectfully. Like I'm just that omnipresent storyteller that wants to get in to everything that I find to be interesting.
And one, I totally get that. I mean, we saw Miley Cyrus after being done with Disney, and Selena Gomez. I mean, Selena Gomez had Spring Break as soon as she was done with Disney.
Yeah.
Miley Cyrus had Wrecking Ball. Elizabeth Berkley had Showgirls.
Mm.
And even then, even moving over to actual like filmmakers, like directors. I mean, you had Martin Scorsese do Hugo after working on like all of these like gangster films for so long. It's a
Yeah.
matter of it's understandable not to want to put yourself in a box because you're an actor. You want to be able to show levels of versatility, and
Yeah.
and that is truly commendable. And you know, you want to try something new, but and I understand not wanting to be known as the guy from Reckless. I totally get it because at that point you'll be like, "Hey, oh, hold on, I need to find some prop here so I can do my
There you
bit
go.
properly." You'd be like, "Hi, here's my resume." Wait, this is the role you last did? Yeah. Okay. We'll just put this over here. Get security. And that's hyperbolic,
Yeah.
obviously.
No, but exactly. I think people do that to you sometimes. They think you are the role that you play. I'm not unaware of that. You know what else I think is interesting is that there is a truth that we put ourselves through the role. So if I've shown you my inner psychosis, if I've shown you my sexual impulse with this new movie, then I do want to show you like these other sides that also exist in me, like wholesome, family friendly. Like and that's what I've realized too, is that I think that most people do have that. I'm not saying we all have to like acknowledge it like I am out loud, but we all have that complexity. And so as an artist, that's the other thing that like drives you. It's not even just wanting to show people things. It's like just I almost feel an instinct to it because then at the very least I'll feel like I kind of showed me in every different kind of context, you know?
Of course, you know, and that like I said, these are all very believable things and understandable things that, you know, when you hear coming from an actor, it's just something that makes sense. You know, you don't necessarily you always want to try new things. You don't want to put yourself in a role, but at the same time, you want to be able to at least show your prowess
Yeah.
as an artist. But
Yeah.
I do want to just circle back just for a brief sec because you essentially your role in Reckless and your role in Gigolo are not necessary. They're similar, but they're not necessarily the same. Um, one deals with themes of obsession. One deals with the theme of like true identity and just not knowing how to proceed with your life when you're stuck in and essentially a box.
Hmm.
But when you went from Reckless to Gigolo, just as let's go with the most well-known example. You had Daniel Day-Lewis, who, yes, he would take long breaks in between roles because he would put everything into them. But you have him playing, Lincoln. You have him play Billy the Butcher. You had him play, the guy from There Will Be Blood. These are all truly unique and emotionally different performances. How do you, as an actor, how do you just reset and because these like I said, it would be one thing if this was like a year and a half apart from one another, but we
Hmm.
are literally dealing with less than 3 months, and I'm guessing what production for both these movies was just like, all right, I'm done with Reckless, time to go to Gigolo, and then you just
I
went
think it
off
was
and
like
then
2.5 weeks. It was like 2.5 week off, and then we started it. Yeah. No, okay, so Reckless, I had spent like 3 or 4 years prepping that character. So I literally, that's a luxury that I had that much time to prep that character. If I'm not delivering in that movie, then I don't know what to say. But literally with Gigolo, and I feel like I'm just being so frank with you, like finding that character took a little longer. And that character has a lot of narrator, like VO, and I've actually done some of that recently. And so it's like I've still been with that character, so I can only say that's the truth of it. I'm sure every kind of way of going in and out of things will be different for every actor and even for me in another context. But with Reckless, I had a lot of prep time. And so I was very well prepared with Alex. Letting go of Alex wasn't easy, but I spent like those 2.5 weeks trying to do that. With Jeremy, I felt like I walked into the production still finding him. And I felt like I found him. I clocked into him like the second day filming. Like I'm not saying the first day is bad, but and then I just could keep going from there. And getting rid of them is hard too. But then, like I just said, I'm having to do VO work for him, so he's kind of still percolating with me. And I'm very hard on myself, so it's like, yeah, I wish I could take what I have right now, bring that to day one on Gigolo. But I do like, with all that said, the challenge of having to just jump into something else. I do think there is something interesting about it creatively, and just being candid with you, it's like it's scary if you feel like I don't know this new character. I just like, but it's like you find your way, hopefully. But that's kind of what it felt like with these two ones.
And even then, it still does seem like you haven't really fully been able to reset. Like, and I know that was the question, and I know the answer is it was a bit of a muddled response, but even then, it's like, what was that line from Rambo? It's like you can't shut it off; it just keeps going. Yeah. So, I mean, you spent 5 months with Alex, and you probably had what, 3 weeks? I mean, yeah, sure, you wrote it, but
Yeah.
you really only had 3 weeks with Jeremy, you said it was.
Yeah. No, that's
So
true.
even then, it's how, as an actor, do you, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. You, you still had a little bit of Alex with you when you were making Gigolo, and now I'm guessing you wrapped filming for what's it called? You wrapped Gigolo what, probably 2 months ago or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and I'm guessing there's still like, and even you just said you're like, "Ah, I should have done that. I should have done this. I should have done that." And it's like,
Yeah.
of course, when you're a creator, you're like, I could have done that better. Could have done that better. Could have done that better.
It's
So
hard not to.
exactly. It's hard not to. So, I think with my question that I tried asking was, how do you transition from one to the other? But it's kind of clear that it's not a matter of, oh, it's easy, or oh, it's hard. It's a matter of, well, I kind of didn't, I just had to put Alex on the back burner and try to focus my best, but even then, that role was still so fresh that it was just it's kind of hard to not bring those things that I did on the previous role into the new one. And I don't think it's not necessarily a bad thing because it allows for deeper exploration and combativeness through the mindscape of an actor. But what I am wondering though is more about the like we talk about wanting to explore psychological roles, and that is right now your forte. You're so very much focusing on the psychological thrillers that come within these roles that very, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this right. It's a matter of when you step away from these roles, that are emotionally demanding and physically demanding, um, do you as of right now want to find yourself a means of just going, like, take a step back and actually focus on something that probably is a little more lighthearted? And for example, the reason why Nolan, whose upcoming movie as of today's date, which is December of 2025, he chose to do the Odyssey because he wanted to do a more fun, fantastical film after doing essentially the deep-rooted psychological trauma of inventing the nuclear bomb that was Oppenheimer. So, look, I know you're going to continue to explore the psychological thriller field, as I have seen that this is a genre that you very deeply thrive in. But in terms of just not being put in a box for the entirety of your career, is there going to come a certain point where you're just like, you want to know what? I want to do a romantic comedy. Put me in a Hallmark movie. Put me in like a stoner comedy, or at the very least, put me in a voiceover booth. I want to voice like a bird in a kids movie. Like, do those thoughts pop in your head, or are you just more like give me a drug addict, give me a war victim, give me these dark roles that are filled with complexity. I know that's a long-winded question, and I apologize, but
No,
I
it's beautiful.
deeply sorry, yeah, go.
It's both of them, bro. They wrestle in my mind. I swear to God, you could ask my friends or some of the people I collaborated with on these projects wanting to collaborate on other things. I've been saying those exact things. Like, I have to do a romantic comedy next. Do you understand that? Like, I have to. Like, it's just like, and then I was like, but then, those other like I kind of want to play Iago from Othello, and it's like a modern day retelling, and he gets out of jail, and he's obviously very fucked up, and but he's fucked up in a very different way than Alex was, or Jeremy in Gigolo. But that'll be that same lane, bro. It'll be that same lane. So I mean, I get it. And I'm gonna make both. So there you go. But I don't know which one I'll make first. It'll be fun to figure it out.
No, and that's it's always fun trying to figure these things out. There's the discussion that comes into play, and then whether it's excuse me, whether it's be writing it, whether it be even talking with a director and being like, this is what I think for the role. Well, this is what I think, and then engaging discussion, like finding the creativity, in my humble opinion, has always been the most fun aspect of any form of filmmaking. I mean, yeah, sure, shooting is great, pre-production, yada yada, but really sitting down and that discourse has always, in my opinion, been the most fun element in regards to filmmaking because it's basically gathering your brushes before you start to paint. And I actually do want to know because I usually ask this to everyone that I've had the pleasure of interviewing, and we've always had these discussions on dream projects, dream roles. What is it that you'd want to do if you were given a blank check? And since you actually are in that field of doing all of these and wearing all these different hats, I actually feel compelled to be able to ask a couple of these questions since you're not necessarily confined into this box. So, as an actor, first and foremost, I'd like to know what is your dream role?
Okay. This is my dream role, bro. Let's hashtag it. Let's give it to Kevin Feige now.
Ooh.
I'm gonna hit the gym every day. I want to be Cyclops in the new X-Men movies. And this is what I want to tell you is, friend, Cyclops, who is the traditional archetype, is actually endlessly compelling and riveting and complex and emotionally fucked up. And if they decide to approach it that way, then there's a whole new way in. And then I feel like I could do something that's interesting with it. And I would also be challenged to want to showcase the different aspects of how I would even present myself. I'm excited to try to do that as an artist and just continue to, like in Gigolo, I shaved my head, and it was kind of like an interesting freeing thing to move away from Alex as well. But that's what I want. I want to be in Kevin Feige's new X-Men movie. All right, I'll work for scale, Kevin Feige. So let's make it happen.
Oh, of course, actually, because you're also talking to another self-proclaimed comic fan. I do want to know, and certain because you are right, Cyclops is a deeply compelling character. For first and foremost, for the most longevity version of X-Men, he was the leader. But
Yeah.
before we go into all that little nitty-gritty, which won't take a lot of time, I do want to know, do you prefer Cyclops dating Jean Grey, or do you prefer him dating Emma Frost?
See, you've got to give me this role because I'm going to say I'm a Frost. I just think it's kind of dirtier and interesting. We need to get into the complexity of this.
You You
See?
do realize they only started dating in both forms of canon One, because Scott cheated on Jean with Emma, and then once they broke up, they got together. They had a pretty good relationship overall. And the
Yeah,
other one is Jean Grey died in Dark Phoenix, and Emma Frost
exactly.
swooped in to save him.
And didn't she manipulate him at first too? Like I just always
Yes,
thought that was so messed up. Also, the way the Dark Phoenix saga has been told endlessly, but never been told the right way, other than the X-Men '90s cartoon. Because the way that at least on a kid cartoon in only a few episodes, showcased like the fucked up way that Jean Grey gets manipulated mentally, like that was never showcased in these movies, and it's annoying because they need to get more into that. My point is keeping it with Cyclops is that Scott and Jean to me are people that get kind of tainted by other people, and I think that's interesting because that's how they can be the archetypes that are traditional and still be morally complex like we're talking about need to be nowadays.
exactly. And on top of that, a lot of people only get these perceptions of Jean Grey and of Scott Summers from the movies, when in all actuality, Jean is not just some, one-dimensional archetype that we see from some of these movies. She like in the comics, other than being one of the strongest mutants, she is a deeply flawed human being who basically tries to suppress her powers,
Yeah,
not because she's like afraid of her mutant abilities, but because she wants to showcase what mutants are capable of without their powers, to showcase that yes, I am still somebody here that is worth talking to. She's always, in my opinion, worked better as an ambassador and a representative rather than someone who's
yeah.
just a member of the X-Men. And even with and you mentioned the Phoenix Saga, I know this whole thing just turned into a comic book the discussion, but
I'm
this
into
is
it.
this is what I've always kind of not liked about how both the Symbiote Saga and the Dark Phoenix saga has been told, and that is it's not just events that take place over the course of like 1 or 2 days or maybe like a week. This is like the Dark Phoenix event took place over the course of, from what I can remember, like over a year in comics,
Yeah,
which like in the lore is like almost like 5 6 months. So, and on top of
yeah.
that, you had this like I feel like the best way to tell the symbiote saga as well as the Dark Phoenix saga would essentially be over the course of like multiple movies, or even just have a whole phase dedicated to it, because this is something that's it's so deeply complex. I mean, it starts off with Jean Grey dying, then in one issue she gets resurrected, destroys a planet in the process, and then goes to Earth, and then you have all of these alien races literally circling Earth and literally going, if you don't give us this chick now, we will destroy you and we will start a war. But
Bro, that's why we need nine X-Men movies. We need three trilogies. Kevin Feige, you can sign me to a nine-picture contract now. You can pay me 100,000 a movie. It will be a ridiculous deal. You know what I mean? Like literally, I'm telling you, the Phoenix story you just talked about, that's a trilogy of films, my friend. And it's just so good. I can see it in my head, and it would be amazing
exactly.
to be a part of it.
It's it works better when more time is given, because one of the biggest drives of the Phoenix saga is the fact that you essentially find out that it's a cosmic entity puppeteering Jean Grey's corpse. And
Yeah.
only every once in a while, like only when it feels threatened, does it decide to turn back on her mind and basically use her as like a meat puppet to guilt trip everybody into like sparing her life. It's such a great concept in my
You
opinion.
know what's so funny? And it's like I'm saying it because it took me years to get over the frustration of it, honestly. But it's honestly ironic that X-Men movies don't even distinguish that Jean Grey was consumed by an entity known as the Phoenix. I know in the latest one they tried to, but that one was so bad. And in all the other ones they didn't even try. And that's what makes me like they just made her schizo and it was so lame. X3, I remember watching at midnight and being so angry when I left the theater. I was so mad. I don't think I've ever been more mad when I left a movie because I was like, the wasted opportunity here after X2 of what X3. X2 should have led us into two more movies at least. You know what I mean? To tell that story.
I could not agree with you more. It's funny that that movie is one of the few movies that actually ever released directly on my birthday, and I remember being so excited. And I remember going to see it. I'm just like,
Was it May 18th? Is that your birthday?
no,
No,
no.
May
It
what's
released
okay.
May 26th,
May 26th.
2006. And I remember going to
Okay.
see it with my dad and my neighbor. And because we loved the first X-Men, X2 is still one of the best
Amazing.
superhero.
One of the
It's
best
amazing.
ever. Oh yeah.
And that's funny. You talk about psychological thrillers and deep emotional characters with very much dark complexities to their stories and to their human to their human souls. The X-Men is so perfect for that because I mean, yes, you do have that whole, social commentary on racial and human rights with them. But what's really interesting though is that when it's a matter of perspective because if you've ever read comics where the X-Men are guest stars, you actually find out that that some of the reasons why the X-Men aren't seen in favorable lights, it's not because they're mutants. It's actually because so many of them are just truly fucking horrible people. Like for example, Scott and a couple of the issues did have very public falling outs with, Jean Grey and with Emma Frost that actually had consequences that hit other heroes. You had,
Yeah.
you know, like Storm, like I said, Jean Grey worked best as an ambassador for mutants, but Storm worked so well as an ambassador for the X-Men because you did have these moments where she was forced to take the X-Men side in Civil War, and her husband, T'Challa, was like, woman, they are assholes. Please, like, you don't need to take their side. And she's like, I have to. I'm sorry. And then they got divorced. And then on top of that, Wolverine, outside of his stories, like, you just find out, yeah, like, it's Hugh Jackman has done a wonderful job humanizing him. And yeah, he has unlikable tendencies, but that mainly stems from drinking and smoking and just overall bad attitude
Yeah.
in the comics, like Wolverine evades taxes, breaks into bars, and drinks them silly so he can go to bed, and literally hits on other female heroes consistently. Like the dude is just a bad guy overall. And I know we're going all over the place with this now,
No,
but
we're talking about
really
X-Men, my favorite thing ever.
but like this is the part that I really, really enjoy about, hearing you talk about X-Men and then seeing your forte as an actor and as an actual filmmaker. And that is, I actually believe that your technical mind and as an actor and as a writer, you would fit so perfectly within the confines of that world
Thank you.
because you understand emotionally vulnerable
Hmm.
characters. Like for example,
Oh yeah.
with Giglo, with masculinity, one of the things that I thought was always so interesting about the X-Men is that after the Dark Phoenix saga, like Cyclops was like the leader for a long time, but after that, Storm became the leader, and to this day is still technically the leader because Scott just got so emotionally compromised, and he kept thinking
Yeah.
that if he holds it all in, he can still be that leader. But you just saw, he basically witnessed the death of his one true love twice. So eventually they had to
Hmm.
give him an intervention. He had to step down. So
There'd
I
be a lot
think
of work I would do, but I feel like Scott has a lot of self-loathing just on the surface, just trying to dive into the truth of Scott. I think that that moves him. I think the lack of family with his dad and his brother and kind of conflict and wanting to live up to protecting everyone, that can sound like cliche, but if it's rooted in a very deeply earnest and emotionally wrought self-loathing kind of modality, I feel like that can drive the character into so many of the circumstances that they're traditionally known for, and it would make complete sense, you know? So just like wanting to approach things from the right place.
I could not agree with you more on that front. Because if any character has other than Gene, Scott has definitely been done the most dirty. Like James Marsden
Yeah.
was so perfect in terms of
Yeah.
the look of the role, but they just didn't know what to do with him after
No.
X1. And
Yeah.
then well, it's not Ty Sheridan, but
Yeah.
Taylor, who stepped in the reboot, had
How
like
stupid.
he almost had it done. He almost had it down, but then just there was too much stuff going on, and eventually they couldn't figure it out. So I would love to see how you would tackle Scott Summers
Thank you,
as an
bro.
actor because I think with what I've seen of your resume so far, you would deeply fit the role in in a complex and very unique manner because I know deep down you would actually give enough of a shit to give audiences that version of Scott. And the closest that we've
Oh
actually
yeah.
seen to the comic version is the X-Men 97 that the reboot that they just did recently.
Oh yeah, I loved it. I loved it.
And
Well, I loved it until I didn't. Your look says you loved it, but you didn't love it. Did
look,
X-97?
I'm not gonna lie. I grew up with X-Men Evolution. That
Mm,
that was my X because unfortunately I'm 90 I was born 97. So
mm,
I uh by the time the X-Men cartoon you know, came into my framework, I already had X-Men Evolution and X-Men the animated
mm.
series looked a bit old.
X-Men Evolution is so different than X-Men animated series.
It
You
is,
know?
and that's why I feel like, and Kevin Feige, if you're watching this, bring Spike back. I get he was exclusive only to that cartoon, and he was added in for reasons that I should not say out loud. But he was so cool, he was so unique, and his relationship with Rogue was so nice. And plus, they actually did something that I wholeheartedly loved, and that is they didn't immediately throw you to Magneto. They're like, look, we get it. The movies are
Mm,
popular, Magneto's popular, but let's build him up as like an
agreed.
actual, like real threat. And plus, I like the idea of that, they made it into a school. So of course, all these guys had to be teenagers. Um,
Yeah, that
and
was
plus,
clever.
yeah.
Yeah.
And plus, it was one of the only times that I've ever seen Wolverine not actively hit on Jean Grey. Um, and which is deeply ironic because the only reason he doesn't do it in the show is that she's I think 16 at the time. And then if you've ever read the Ultimate Comics storyline, he still hit on Jean Grey and that caught like I said, remember how I said the X-Men and other people's comics are just assholes?
Mm,
In one of the Ultimate Spider-Man runs, Peter gets his brain switched with Wolverine's, and after a whole bunch of shenanigans ensue, it's found out that Jean Grey did it to teach Logan a lesson, but all it actually did was make Logan do more worse things, and it caused Peter Parker to just crash out and basically publicly not condone. He publicly outcried against the X-Men until he started dating Kitty Pryde. But no, but
you know
I
what I want to
watched
ask you
X.
real quick?
Oh, what?
Are you excited about Avengers Doomsday?
Look, I will admit I am excited. I don't want to be because I feel like ever since Endgame, Marvel has had a lot more losses than they've had hits. But I mean, you're talking about James Marsden coming back as Cyclops, and I mean, you get to see the Fantastic Four with
Oh
the
yeah.
X-Men, with the Avengers. And look, as much as I'm like, this is very clearly Marvel throwing everything they have into the wall and hoping
Yeah.
it sticks. It's very much smelling like pure desperation.
Oh, for sure. But you know what
Uh,
I need? I need at least 45 minutes of X-Men in this movie. Kevin Feige, 45 minutes. And obviously Halle Berry, Famke Janssen, what's her name? Anna Paquin are all going to be in it too, right? Like this is asinine if they're not going to
uh,
have them in it. They're just trying to hide them for some reason. Do you know what I mean? Like I need all X-Men, baby. I need every Fox X-Men in alignment
the only
here.
ones that are confirmed back as of right now were Charles Xavier, Magneto, Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler, which is really
That's
nice.
dope.
Kelsey Grammer as Beast, James Marsden as Cyclops, Rebecca Romaine as Rebecca Romaine. That enough alone is enough to make me go hell yeah.
No, for
And
sure. Look, I'm
Channing
being
Tatum.
greedy and Channing Tatum as Gambit, which whatever. Like I don't dislike that, but I'm just saying,
You
then you
need
better give
everybody.
me. You need, yeah. So my point is Jean Grey and Storm and Rogue. Are you kidding? Obviously, this is what's going to happen, and I actually know it will happen. Just like I know Kevin Feige will cast me in X-Men.
Thank you,
Literally,
Feige.
Jean Grey Storm, yes, Jean Grey Storm and Rogue will definitely be in this movie, bro. And they'll be like badass, and they'll fucking like tear shit up and like break bones. And they'll definitely have like a moment like when Thor comes in Avengers Infinity War and saves everyone. Jean Grey Storm and Rogue are gonna do that. If that's not happening, then I don't know what they're doing at Marvel. I'm so serious.
Well, then
Uh,
again, we know that Spider-Man's not showing up in Doomsday, but will be in Secret Wars, which he better get his black suit in that movie and
yeah,
do the classic. Because if not,
yeah.
I'm going to be so, because X-Men's your thing, Spider-Man's mine. I'm a
Oh
huge
hell yeah.
Spider-Man fan, but
Brand New Day is gonna be great. I feel like it's gonna be great.
I know that Tom Holland has a lot more say in this franchise now, and I know he's heard people like me say, please just give us a legitimately good because the symbiote arc next to the death of Gwen Stacy. Also, I'm just gonna say this on the side. I am actually shocked that they managed to pull off one more day in a way that wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
Because I grew up with Spider-Man already being married and being a hero for years. That was me. That was my Spider-Man. And so when I'm like, wait, hold on, he sold his soul to the devil for what? Wait, for Aunt May because she got shot by the Kingpin. Okay, well, wouldn't Aunt May say, "Hey, don't do this for me. I've lived my life." No. Oh no, she did say that, and he still chose to do it. What? Oh, because Marvel wasn't the editors weren't happy with him being happy. What are you talking about? Wait, who's Paul? So it was. I'm hoping for a I want a darker Spider-Man because a lot of Spider-Man's more interesting stories have always been after high school, after college, and I've really enjoyed, seeing Peter get beaten down but always rising up. That's why I've always loved Spider-Man, and it seems that mentality is still prevalent in Marvel when it comes to the comics, but it's a matter of the reason why we like seeing him get back up is because usually when gets back up, he gets a win, you know? For every
Yeah.
death of Gwen Stacy, there is Mary Jane coming in and actually fixing his life. So, what I'm hoping for is I would just like Black Cat, preferably played by Sydney Sweeney, to look, she's actively campaigned for the role, and she's also close enough in age range to Tom Holland where it makes sense. Um, but I want for every loss that Spider-Man gets, there needs to be a win. And
Do you
holy
think
sh
Sadie Sink is playing Tobey Maguire's daughter? And do you think Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield
No,
are going to
no,
be
oh
in
my God.
another?
No, James, stop. No, we are not doing this. You can't just keep saying why does everyone fucking no, I know which character she's playing because she's gonna be in Avengers Doomsday. She's not playing Tobey Maguire's daughter. That is don't laugh at me, you son of a bitch. I know what you fucking did.
I believe it, bro. I believe the Sony hacks want more Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield $1 billion money, bro. They're gonna
I know,
shoehorn
but
this in.
literally Tom Holland has said, "Look, like everyone at Marvel and Sony have been like, we understand that's what you want, but if every fucking movie that they make is just those three wads getting back together, then it's gonna get stale." The
Yeah, they'll
whole
point at each other, bro.
no, it's no,
I heard there was a battle going on. I don't know how true this is, but I remember reading that's like Marvel didn't want that and Sony did, and it was like Marvel wants a grounded Spider-Man 4 on the street with like Kingpin and Daredevil and stuff, and Sony wants Tobey Maguire again and $1 billion movie.
I here's the thing. The reason why No Way Home worked so well, despite how atrocious those leaks were, uh,
Mm,
it was because you had that multiverse story, and it was also the cap off to the home trilogy. Now I think what's most likely going to happen is that we're going to have the Day trilogy, where
mm.
like no joke, if the next Spider-Man movie isn't called Hard Day's Night and then involves the symbiote, I'm going to be so ashamed. But no, it's the reason why I don't believe that they should be doing a multiverse story, at least on this caliber, is because one, it will dilute how special No Way Home is. Because no joke, that is one of the most messily written movies I have ever seen in my entire life. where, no joke, if you think about certain canonical elements for a second, you're like, wait a minute, how did Electro never knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man. So why did he get teleported there? Also, it's like we also have to stop them or else everyone's gonna die. And it's like, wait, well, hold on a minute. Sandman didn't die. He was also pulled in a later point in time, like then in the canon, and also Lizard doesn't die. So wouldn't the point just to be focusing on Goblin and Ock and Electro to make sure they don't die? Wait, hold on a second. None of this shit's making sense. But then you're like, "Ooh, Willem Dafoe was Green Goblin, and he's beating the shit out of a teenager." Okay, all my sins are forgiven. I don't care because Willem Dafoe's dead. Like that movie works because not because of Tobey Maguire, not because of Andrew Garfield, which it does help, but because Willem Dafoe just wanted an excuse to beat the shit out of Tom Holland, and I respect him for that. I really, really do.
Every time that one of those thoughts happened in the audience, the movie went, "Here, have a member berry. Remember
Uh,
this? Have
it's
another member berry."
don't get me wrong, it definitely does feel like one of those movies, but it's done so in a way where, unlike say Star Wars, where the member berry is Glup Shido, it seems with like No Way Home, it felt so much like the creators of this movie going like, you want to know what? We love Spider-Man and we want to show you how much we love Spider-Man. We want to acknowledge everything that
Yeah,
came before us. And it's like,
it
yeah,
worked.
it's a member berry moment, but it's at least made with love, which I think is deeply impactful. And to
Yes.
circle back, Sadie Sink's character, plus Sadie Sink is very much a, ironically enough, kind of like how you're focusing on psychological thrillers, Sadie Sink, I
Hmm.
think, has this sort of archetype as being a little bit of grunge. You know, the
Mm.
like she's angsty and she's grungy. We've seen that in The Whale and we saw that in Stranger Things. And
Hmm.
I think it was confirmed by someone on set during like a Reddit post, but she I think plays a protege of the Punisher. Um,
Oh,
which I still look. I'm excited for Punisher. I love John Bernthal, and I think his version of the Punisher perfectly encapsulates Frank Castle, the likes of which I don't think anyone else could have done, and that's
mm.
including Thomas Jane. But I really have no idea how they're going to do that movie and make it PG-13 unless it's just Spider-Man the whole time going, "Stop killing people, please." Um, but after that nearly 30-minute long tangent on comic books, I can now get to another question. Sorry to the viewers watching. It's clear that Brian and I are very,
Yeah.
very intense comic fans. So
Kevin Feige, call us.
oh yes, call me to write Spider-Man or so. Hell, I'll be Eddie Brock. Put me in a wig. I'm bald. Just put me. You have the money for wigs, Kevin. I can wear a wig. But what I wanted to get back to, because I know for a fact we're going to be here for 3 hours, and at that point, this doesn't become about Bryan James, actor who's good with psychological thrillers. It's let's watch two nerds talk about comics. So I have to be the adult and put the foot down. But at some point, you and I are definitely going to need to like
We
just like
do.
set aside time some point in the near future and just
Yeah,
talk about this stuff because it's
for
clear
sure,
you know
bro.
your shit and it's clear I
Thank
know
you.
mine.
Oh yeah, 1,000,000%.
But I wanted to know, when it comes to, you as an actor, you said your dream role was Scott Summers because, and we have been able to break down the intricacies that come with a role like that because you do have this understanding of deep psychological, if not sort of tortured roles that fall within that forte. Of course, you're not trying to box yourself in, but this is just something that you know pretty well.
Yeah.
And so now with movies like Reckless and Gigolo and an upcoming project that we may talk about at some point, but you definitely have those hats as a writer and director. And this is one thing that I would like to ask you that I've asked these others as well. Hypothetically, and by the way, I'm gonna put a I have can't believe I have to do this. I'm putting a caveat in because Jake Schreier of Beef and Thunderbolts fame is already writing and directing the new X-Men movie. So you can't say X-Men. I'm sorry. That is a caveat. There's an asterisk there. You can't say that. So, going back, if you were given a blank check, what would you make? And feel free to be as explicit or as vague as possible.
Will you laugh at me if I say I want to remake Wild Things from 1998? But we'll make it even. See, I got my gigolo brain going, bro. I gotta get to my Hallmark movies again.
Hold on. Stop, 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 stop. I have one question for you, and I think you know what this question is. With Wild Things, there was a certain scene that has since gained notoriety online for a very specific reason, and I want to know, would you intend on remaking that scene as well?
I mean, of course.
uh, oh, bro. Okay, okay, all right. Continue. Sorry, I had to let that wash over me for a second because out of
I
everything
mean,
I could have possibly heard, that was something I wasn't expecting.
I know you just gave me a blank check though. I
Oh,
just,
that's true. That's true. But continue,
yeah,
continue.
you know. Oh man. Um, hmm. Yeah, no, I also am just, happy to make original stories and try to tell things that are interesting. So really just wanting to like find things that have a complexity in them that feels true to the human condition. I'm not trying to be vague, but that's honestly like what we need more of. I always make fun of it, but in a genuine way when it's like Marty, it's cinema. It's like when Martin Scorsese was speaking about what is and isn't cinema, to me, he was simply stating and it's not simply at all. It's the most important thing about film, but it's having a connection with the characters. It's going on a journey with them. When you're watching something that feels like an amusement park ride, there's something to be had out of that, but that's not having an emotional response or with an arc with a through line for a character. And so we don't want to lose that. So I definitely would want to like honestly take all the money and make a lot of little movies that have that in it because the market needs to be saturated with more of that. Otherwise, one day everything's just gonna be Jurassic Park 19, Marvel 78, Star Wars 69. You know what I mean? But it's just, it's very depressing to think that way. But I could see that happening.
No, and I agree too. In fact, I've proposed that a good way to kind of fix Hollywood in terms of how to get people back in theaters is you know shut theaters down or like just not release, not necessarily shut theaters down, but don't have any new productions, at least for a bit. Just re-release old stuff and then really retake a look at what is necessary for filmmaking. And if anything, we've seen, I mean, The Whale had like a budget of maybe $5 million and it recouped, I think, 4 or 5 times its budget.
That
So
was a
I
great movie
think
too.
it was a very, I mean, Brendan Fraser. Oh yeah, Mummy 4. Sorry, technically
Oh, I'm
Mummy
so
3.
excited about that. That would be so
He
cool.
he has explicitly stated that the route that they're taking, they're like they're going to ignore Mummy 3. This is going to be a direct sequel to Mummy 2. And
And it's so good.
apparently,
Rachel Weisz is back. Like she needs to be there too. So that's
oh no,
very
she
exciting.
she has to. She has to.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard, she is at least in talks to reprise her role, which if she comes back, then they can be and then it can say in the marketing from Academy Award winner Brendan Fraser and Academy Award winner Rachel
That's
Weisz.
so cool. And
Exactly.
also that movie, I know you know this, but just like 1999's The Mummy is so fire. I mean, they have such chemistry. That's such an underrated movie. Like for what it is, honestly, it's a flawless movie for what it is. I think that movie is just so great. You can rewatch that movie and just get so into it. And when we watch all this churned out streaming content, you really reflect on these other movies with more reverence, and you're just like, oh my God, this is done a little different and a lot better.
There, when we talk about art and absolute cinema, I'm Martin Scorsese. This is my Scorsese impression. I don't know. But when we talk about what is art, I think you almost hit the nail on the head, in my humble opinion. But I think what is art is mainly, or rather, what is cinema is what is something made by like a group of people with passion without necessarily studio oversight. I
Mm.
think there's a difference between, Rings of Power and Lord of the Rings. You can tell that one is basically headed by a studio, while one was
Mm.
made by somebody who cares deeply. I mean, it's the difference between, the whale, like Thunderbolts. Actually,
Yeah.
even then, Thunderbolts is actually a very bad example because, and this is funny enough, that movie didn't get as much oversight as other Marvel movies got, because during the time Thunderbolts was being made, Captain America: Brave New World was going through its tumultuous production, so most eyes were on that movie, allowing Jake Schreier to actually make the movie that he kind of wanted to make. And it allowed and when you allow a creator to create, you get a Black Panther, you get a Guardians of the Galaxy. And so, we talk about absolute cinema. I think it's a matter of seeing where the passion lies, because it is unfair to put The Whale in the same conversation as a Marvel movie. But
Yeah.
to wholeheartedly categorize those and actually compare cinema to slop, if I may, I think better examples wouldn't necessarily be the difference between something like John Wick, the first John Wick, and maybe maybe something like Captain America: Brave New World. One driven by a vision of artistic integrity, and one driven by studio notes and an overarching plan. I think
Yeah.
that's where the real difference lies. And I do admire your passion to be brave enough to say, look, as much as I want to say remake Wild Things, I would love to be able to get a blank check to actually fund smaller character driven dramas, because, as much as the audience, and sometimes I'm in that same boat, I would love, like, of course, it's like, why do I need all this talky stuff? Like, give me, just give me Avatar, which, by the way, I love Avatar, and I feel bad about saying that, but yeah, give me something big like Avatar. Give me Avengers Doomsday. Give me Alien 5, or give me the new Predator.
Yes.
These are all things that I want, but but like, you as an actor, we talked about this earlier. The reason why those talky dramas are still being made, and why theater and drama as a whole and as a medium, not just for TV or movies, just overall, is still prevalent. It's because, as an actor, it's fun. you
Yeah.
know to what degrees of fun is not necessarily up for debate here, but it's still fun. And I do think that, we have been seeing things slip more and more and more in terms of box office returns and in terms of what people want now. But I think that if we kind of just hit the reboot button a little bit, make and really reprioritize things. The reason why so many of these old movies that were action films made so much money was because a lot of them were few and far between. And so, if every film's an action blockbuster, no one's going to feel compelled to get out. So, if anything, I think prioritizing, one blockbuster a month, or one blockbuster every 2 months, and then instead rediverging those funds to something small scale, maybe like give us like a $10 million budget, about, maybe a family in Wyoming having to deal with a snowstorm, and I don't know, maybe perhaps one of their horses comes alive and tries to deal with a divorce. That's off the top of my head. $10 million, horse therapist. There you go. You can be stupid, but it's
No, for
still
sure.
it's still something that
Amazing.
we can do. Anywho,
Yeah. And it was a blessing growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, even into the 2010s, because at least there was more breath in the market. Like it is kind of sad right now how there aren't a lot of different swings, because Hollywood gets very reactionary to what is and isn't successful. But if they have more swings with different types of movies and they just keep releasing them in the theaters, then eventually some of those will hit big. You can have original, so to speak, movies do well again instead of everything being a sequel or a franchise.
Exactly. Exactly. And on that note, it has been almost an hour and 30 minutes. And as much as I'd love to talk more, I, I cannot take up any more of your time than I already have. So on that note, um, I would love to say thank you so much for being on the show today, and so much. There's so much thanks I want to give you for actually taking the time to really divert into these very niche topics and actually engage with just a charming amount of enthusiasm.
Hey, thank you. It was a pleasure. Hopefully, we'll talk again. And thanks for pushing Gigolo comes out Valentine's Day, gigolo2026.com.
Right. And for those of you watching, links will be in the description below, as well as links to Reckless and any other sort of information. So, with that, take care. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, brother. Take care.